much for joining us today. We have Sabrina Ionescu. We also have Kylie Shook. I ask that you ask one question and a follow-up as we have 10 minutes with each athlete. If time permits, I'll circle back around to any additional questions. Please raise your hands. We will start with Jeff Magliochetti.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us today. Good to see you. So, what's the atmosphere been like for you in practice recently on a personal level? With the team going through, with you going through your first, professional adversity, at least from an on-court perspective.
Yeah, it's been good. I think internally, how we treat each other, how we, take on practice hasn't really changed no matter what the outcome of the games have been. So every single practice we continue to get better, continue to work on what we need to, and learn through the adversity that we're facing, and just work as a team.
How do you combat, times of adversity on the court? Is there any special quote or source of help you turn to? There's been a coach you've been working with personally? How do you basically take care of yourself on the court and off the court as well when you're going through tough times such as these from a professional perspective?
I don't really take this as a tough time. I'm blessed to be able to play this game and to be healthy and out there on the court. And just because, we're not winning some games, that's kind of how it goes with a team that's young and new and learning, what it's like to play in this league. And so we're just really staying confident, staying true to ourselves, learning from our mistakes. That's really what it is. Just learning what worked for us at the beginning, what we need to continue to improve on, and bring that into every single game that we play.
Fair enough. Appreciate your time and insight.
Yep.
Jackie Powell.
Hey, Sabrina, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here with us. So building off of what Jeff said, when we talked to Coach on Saturday night, he talked about how this week you guys are really looking to figure out how to make that next chess move on your opponents as they've seemed to adjust and make that, when playing you guys. So take me through what this week has been like in discovering what that next chess move is.
Yeah, it's really just focusing on us. It's easy to go back and watch film on what teams are doing and how they're playing this. But I think at the end of the day, it's really, we're focusing on the controllables and what we can do better. And so that obviously starts with offensive rebounding and executing and being where we need to be on defense. And so we're getting back to the drawing board and just working on those simple things that we worked on at the beginning of training camp and making sure that we're doing them night in and night out, every single play, and not letting any of those little things slip away, because over time, that's what adds up to big things like wins and losses. And so we're really just focusing on all the little things that, make this team, what it is and makes us who we are. And so I think that's what we're doing this week in practice and preparation for these next games.
So just to clarify for me, what exactly defines who you are? Like when you say going back to those things?
Yeah, well, defense. We've been honing in on that since we started training camp. And I think that's really where our identity is, making people feel us on defense, being a presence, getting stops and then scoring. We shoot the ball really well. Our offense kind of flows naturally during the game. And I think it really starts on the defensive end for us, is if we're locked in as a team in the right positions where we need to be, bringing defensive intensity all game long, not in spurts. And, we punch first as soon as we start the game and can continue that throughout the whole game. We haven't had much losses when we've done those things correctly. And so that's what we need to get back to, and just figuring out what's working, what's not, why we're not focusing on those things and practicing them this week.
Thanks so much, Sabrina. I appreciate it.
Miles Ehrlich.
Hey, Sabrina. Excuse me. After a frenetic pace to start the season with games practically every other day for the first few weeks, the schedule has opened up a bit. But then the road trip again will start another every other day scenario, which Kurt Miller of the Suns has described as a bubble season on steroids, due to the travel component being added into this really tight schedule. Has this week off from games allowed you a moment to take a step back and evaluate where your game is at? And what have been your takeaways of really the longest stretch of professional basketball that you've played?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's hard playing games every other night, traveling, being in airports for hours on end. You're a little bit tired when you get to different cities and trying to get into the practice facility. And sometimes with games being so close back to back, you don't really have time to reflect on the game that was in the past because you're already looking for the next one that's coming. And so I think this week is a prime example of a week that we're able to just reflect on ourselves and take the time to continue to get better on what we need to. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to, is just having this week off, of being able to look back, rewatch some games, take some time and figure out what I need to improve on and continue to work on, as this is my first professional season play.
Thanks. And to follow up on that, what is the physical toll? But you'd say like all of the travel and especially the airports, and at the WNBA level, there aren't private flights or anything like that. So what is that physical toll of just going at it every other day like this?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone. But we know that every single team is doing it across the league. There's not really an exception. And so there's not much of an excuse. You have to come in ready, do what you can to take care of your body. But I'd be lying if I would say that there wasn't a toll. Of course there is, with, traveling across country, getting on commercial flights and having to sit in airports, wait around. I mean, it all ends up adding up. But like I said, everyone across the league is doing it. So it's not much of an excuse.
Erica Ayala.
Thank you. Excuse me. Sabrina, I actually wanted to ask you for Forbes Sports Money a little bit about your new partnership with Boardroom and 35 Ventures. Just how did that come about, and what are you looking forward to most as you're building out your own personal business portfolio?
Yeah, I think that I have a pretty good relationship with Kevin. And so I think that came about just us, both being out here in Brooklyn and both hoop junkies and always wanting to talk about basketball, and kind of also understanding the sports world and the culture that comes with it. And so that's kind of how it came about. But I think I'm just excited to learn and just continuing to grow my brand on and off the court. 35 Ventures and everything that they're doing, everything Kevin and Rich Kleiman are doing in the business world as well, is something that I thought that I could use and just learn from, especially being so young in this league. I thought it, kind of give me a head start on what I want to do with my future and how I want to give back, and, where I want to invest and kind of align my brand with.
And to follow up on that, you mentioned Rich. When I spoke to him, he said he hopes that this partnership for you will be you having an ally, that this excuse me, that Boardroom will work in allyship with you as you do all of those things that you just mentioned. In what ways have you already felt that, and how do you see this progressing allies for women in sports in particular?
Absolutely, I have, especially being, so far from home and having my network of people, mostly on the West Coast. It does give me this kind of familiar, kind of family feeling with having them here in Brooklyn, and just knowing that they have my back. I always can call on someone, drive by their office, see them, whatever I need to do. And kind of just, gives you that feeling of security, having, someone so close. And I think that's really a huge part of it as well. It wasn't really just a business and transactional decision, but it was always just based off of relationships. And both Rich and Kevin are great people, and so is their staff. And so I'm just excited to continue to grow this, but also I think just show younger and older generations, and me and Kevin can just continue to use our platforms to show people kind of into our lives and what we're doing, and be able to, be the voice that tells those stories.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Last question, Christian Charisma.
Hi, Sabrina. With 9 games under your belt in your first professional season, opposing defenses have been throwing different looks at you with all the gravity that you bring to the court. What are some of the differences between reading these different coverages and the smaller windows and angles in the WNBA in comparison to what you saw in college?
Well, you just said it. I mean, there's only a certain amount of defenses that, teams can throw at you. I have seen them all in college, but of course at this level, just the IQ, the athleticism, the passing windows, all of those things shrink, and you have to be able to make those reads and those decisions in a split of a second. And obviously players, even on the backside defense, are a lot smarter. They're scouting you better. They're watching a lot of the games, and they're just at a higher, level than they are in college. And so you really have to be 2 steps ahead and not 1 step ahead when manipulating a lot of these defenses, because they know how to guard them, and they've been doing it for some of them have been doing it for 10 plus years. And so it's nothing that they haven't seen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. Next up, we have Kylie Shook. Please raise your hand if you have questions for Kylie. First question, Jeff Magliochetti.
Kylie, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. We've hit a bit of a landmark on the WNBA schedule, and in your schedule anyway, in the sense that we're about a quarter of the way through this season. Do you think you've lived up to your personal expectations thus far, and has this season worked out to the way you've wanted it to go thus far?
Individually or as a team?
Both. If you're-
Yeah, I feel like as a team, we started off to a great start. And then it's just a learning curve. Like I said, basketball's up and down. So I think we're on another one of those learning curves. So I think we've done well so far. Personally, for myself, yes and no. I think at times I could be more aggressive and be in a stance more and use my body the way it needs to be used. But other than that, I think I've been good attitude, great team. It's been a good season so far.
What have been your impressions of working with Rashonda Gray, who has returned to the roster this week?
Oh, she's good. She's definitely making me better in practice. She's getting all kinds of rebounds, everything. So we'll be boxing out.
Thanks so much.
Miles Ehrlich.
Hey, Kylie. You had a couple of games in a row before this break where you had limited minutes on the court, and I'm sure that's been a little bit frustrating, especially with what a heavy load you've had early in the season. But now with this break and knowing that you have a couple of really large front court teams on deck in Phoenix and then those rematches against Vegas, what have you been working on during this break to better prepare yourself for those matchups, because they need you down low and that physicality?
For one, not fouling, but for two, like you said, just being physical, using the physicality that we have, running, sprinting the floor. I think my main thing is just staying low defensively. Moving my feet is just, like I said, what gets me started. Defense always gets me started. So I think that needs to be a focus coming into these games, because we do have such good post players, good guards, great teams coming up.
Thanks so much.
Jackie Powell.
Hey, Kylie, good to talk to you. Thank you for being here. I want to expand a bit on Miles' question, and I want to understand, or if you could take us through what you've learned in these past two games against these really strong posts, in Connecticut and the Aces, but also how has this coaching staff helped you get past these games, making sure you don't get too down on yourself if you make a mistake. And can you just explain to us the type of trust that this group has in you as a young post player?
Our coaches are very motivational. They say the right things at the right times. They're very positive. But just for the fact that we are, there's new teams every year, but we do have a lot of young players who play a lot of minutes. So I think it's just the learning curve that I keep going back to. The coaches know that there's going to be games where we do good, games where we need to learn. Sabrina plays a lot of minutes and she's new to the league. Like, this is basically her first year. So the pressure from guards who have been in the league for 8-10 years, like, that's something that we have to learn and get through. So I would say that's why it's more on the positive aspect, because we are learning. So it's just like looking at our potential that we can come to.
Right. And so Coach Hopkins talked to us a lot about how the goals for this week were figuring out how you guys can make that next chess move on your opponents and how you guys can all make that adjustment. So what types of adjustments have you been making this week in order to make that chess move when you go out west?
I would say just getting back to how we started, moving the ball the way we did when we first, I think teams being physical with us kind of threw us off. And now we're learning to play through it. So just knowing that people are going to come out with the bang and we need to come back with it.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jeff Magliochetti.
Hey, Hey, Kylie, thanks for taking another one here. Since we have a bit of a larger sample size under our belts right now, we're about a quarter of the way through this season. How much has the stability of being out of the bubble helped you guys out? Because there's been some new innovations thus far. Your rookie season was filled with, plenty of back-to-backs, little to no off days. Now you have your own arena. You have, a week off now at this point. So how much has the stability meant to you in your second year as compared to the chaos of the bubble in the first year, the necessary chaos, but still?
I mean, it's been nice being home court, but I will tell you one plus about the bubble is not traveling. But no, it's been nice because having fans back, having our own apartments, being able to go get food, cook, all that stuff. But it's a better mental, more positive, because the bubble is a struggle mentally. So I would say that's the main thing for me.
For sure. Thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Great. If we have no more questions for Kylie, we will let her go. Thank you all for joining us today. We will send the recording shortly. Thank you.